James Hillman says, the way through the world is more difficult to find than the way beyond it. The way through the world is more difficult to find than the way beyond it. Today, as we revisit this story of these two travelers on the Sunday that Jesus rose, but who didn't know what had happened. They knew some of the facts about what had happened, but they didn't really know. They didn't really understand. And we get to see our whole spiritual journey in just these few verses. And so in this story today, we navigate our way from desiring to recognizing, to inviting, to community and fellowship, and yet again, into a new beginning. So let's jump in. So even if your preferred music is death metal rock and roll, although I don't know why it would be, but all kinds, takes all kinds, you're probably also familiar with this 400-year-old song Stephen just sang for us, right? And as you listened, I'm wondering what word jumped out at you. Anybody care to volunteer? Okay, I'll volunteer. It's fine. And since I am not known for my subtlety, my word was right in the title. Desiring. Desiring. Longing. And maybe, yes, I was a little influenced by the longing in the story as these two men walked along and the stranger walks up beside them and inquires what they're chatting about, and they say, "What, are you the only guy in town who doesn't know what happened?" And we had hoped that he would be the one. We had hoped that he would be the one to deliver us from this hopeless, terrifying, oppressed life that we are living. The earliest Christians called themselves people on the way, people who belong to the way. So walking and talking is in our DNA. Stuff happens when we walk and talk together. Spiritual stuff. On Easter Sunday, we talked a lot about noticing and recognizing. Desiring something and then recognizing it. And the lack of recognition in this story is what gives it all its dramatic power, right? Right at the beginning, the fact that they don't recognize Jesus is so captivating. That's what captures our attention. We know who these two disconsolate pilgrims are talking to. We know that the object of their desiring is right in front of them. We long for them to recognize it, and we long for it in our own lives. We're right there in the story. We're right there in the story. But there hasn't been very much recognizing yet in this story. But it's 7 miles from Jerusalem to Emmaus. That's a good long golf course. That's the same walk as walking a good long golf course, only without all that pesky golfing, right? So we know it's going to be at least 3 hours. Time enough for a conversation, time enough for recognition, but only if you're traveling at the speed of God. Only if you're traveling at the speed of God. I was recently listening to a podcast where a woman who was a television executive was talking about her work, and she said, "I spend all my life blowing and going." And that just captivated me. She talked about blowing and going. She said, "I never have enough time. I never have enough money. I never have enough resources. I've always got more things to do and not enough to get them done. And so I am just always getting through it." And she said, and that's why I've achieved so much, is I can really just blow and go, and just plow through that list of things that need to happen, and I can make something happen at the end of it. She said, but when I step back from my life, I recognize the richness of what's going on. A job I love, a job that lets me be creative, relationships with other creative people. She said, I have to slow down and look at the bigger picture. I have to move away from my blowing and going to see what's happening in my soul. To see what's happening in my soul. She doesn't use the phrase traveling at the speed of God, but that's what I thought of. As I read the story about these two walking and talking disciples today, I thought, what would it mean to travel at the speed of God? Luke only spends a sentence on the conversation that they have before this stranger joins them, and we know these kinds of conversations can last a lifetime. What do you talk about when you're going no place in particular? Those are the conversations that are soul conversations. What do we do when we've reached our wits' end? What do we do when what we thought was worth our life turns out not to be worth our life? What happens when we feel washed up? So they begin one of these conversations with each other. But the real walking and talking of their life happens when Jesus shows up. And since they have a 3-hour walk, there's time for everything to change. There's desiring, there's recognition, there's inviting. They get to their destination, they get to Emmaus, and Jesus acts like he's going to walk on, and they stop him. Now, most biblical scholars will tell you this is essential to the culture. You don't let somebody, as evening draws in, you don't let a single person all alone walk the byways to the next village. That's just practically a death sentence. The bandits are out at night, and they'd as soon kill you and take your stuff as leave you alone. And so most biblical commentaries will explain how important in their culture it was that they invited Jesus in, but I just can't help but feel they weren't done talking. They weren't done with the conversation. You know, God's love is the kind of thing you can turn your back on if you want to. You can close the door of your heart, you can bolt your mind shut. It's your choice. It really is free will. It really is free will. And in this case, these guys get no ethereal entrance. In John's gospel, Jesus walks through walls to show up, and the magic happens, and who wouldn't recognize that? But they don't see what's going on until a little later in the story. First, there's an invitation. First, they have to invite him to come in. Now, lots of conventional Christian theology stops right there. It says, see, your path was headed to Jesus. Jesus is your destination. But I think when we travel at the speed of God, Jesus is the path. There's no destination, only the endless walking in the enveloping presence of love. That's the life we're looking for. The journey, the walking, the trip, enveloped in love. The life we're looking for. A journey enveloped in love. And then we come to the crux of this story, the heart of the soul work for today. As we include and invite, the recognition happens and the grace enters. As we include and invite, the recognition happens and the grace enters. And this is not the destination, it is the beginning. It is not the destination, it is the beginning. Because what they find when they arrive at their destination is that they're still hungry and thirsty, physically, yes, but also spiritually, for whatever it is this stranger has brought them. Whatever prompts them, the hospitality of the traveling companions becomes the doorway to grace. I want you to think about that for a minute. The hospitality of these traveling companions, these two people, the incipient church, the Christian church there, before it's even born, becomes the doorway to grace. Hospitality is the secret to grace. Hospitality. Think about that next time you're serving a burrito to someone in the parking lot. Think about that next time you take someone's grocery cart back to the grocery store. Think about that next time you empty your bank account for a cause you believe in. And so desiring, recognition, inviting brings us not to our destination, but to our beginning. Luke puts Jesus' entire mission in the context of a journey. And all of Luke's gospel is about this journey of Jesus. And then Luke is actually the author of the book of Acts. I don't know why they're not put together in the Bible. John is between them. It's confusing. But as Luke tells the story, the Jesus journey now becomes the journey of the church. And according to Acts 9, it goes to the ends of the earth. This is just the beginning. This is the launch. Jesus' life is the launch for yours. It's always a journey. It's always beginning. It's always beginning again. I don't know where you are on your life journey. Maybe right now your life's path is just strewn with rose petals. That's fabulous. Everybody should have a few seasons of that. And relish it. Don't feel guilty. Don't go looking for trouble. Just relish when things are beautiful and rich and full for you. And don't worry about the road ahead. Maybe you're not so much with the rose petals these days. You've had a distressing diagnosis. I have a friend who's been struggling with colon cancer and just this week found out it's metastasized to her liver. And she's my age, and we've known each other for 50 years. Or maybe your friend and fellow soldier was missing in action and has now been declared presumed dead. Maybe someone you love has lost their way. Wherever your road is taking you right now, I invite you to travel at the speed of God. And I'd like to offer you two gifts. I'd like to offer you a poem, and then we're going to offer you a song. So I invite you to just let this poem and this song be a gift to you. This is by Steve Garnis Holmes. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. All those times you walked through loss, wandered in disorientation, trudged on an endless trek to nowhere, and thought you were alone. There's a kind of being held that if you let it hold you, holds you through the deepest abyss, the bleakest ruin, and it never loses you. But the unseen one gives no clues. You can't detect you're being held any more than a fetus knows that it's being carried. Only afterward can the child recognize the mother. Even only now, late in the poem, do you see, someone has been reading with you from the first word. Beginning, always beginning. And so we walk together, and I'm grateful.